have a kind of different format today. I'm trying a larger lesson followed by some viewer games. What we've been doing previously, we were looking at ideas like, basically 5 or 6 viewer games per session. But I think it might be better to do a little bit more of a split between viewer games and, basically a split between viewer games and game analysis. So I was thinking, for a while we could maybe try like one 45-minute lesson or maybe multiple like smaller lessons, and then have that followed up by 3 viewer analysis games in every session that we do. So anyways, I think this is I think this is an interesting idea. Moving more towards an instructional section or at least a mix. So we can kind of get started on that. What people were interested in looking at was basically suitable openings based on playing style. So, that's a very difficult question. It depends on kind of what your strengths are. We don't have, it's the type of thing that I think you could probably build, but the closest thing that I could find for openings based on playing style was actually just like something there's basically this chart, basically there's people have done this as sort of a tree, there's like a choose an opening tree, where they basically do an analysis of, is it this, then pick this, is it this, then pick this, and you can do it in kind of a path type format. But I guess what's interesting about it is, there isn't really a metric that exists, to assess your strengths as a player. You can kind of guess around it. You can do stuff like, are you a positional player? Are you a tactical player? And choose based on that. But there's a lot of intricacies here that are kind of complicated. Stylistically speaking, I think the best way to play in general is just to be better than your opponent. That sounds really simple, but I think if you make yourself more fundamentally strong, and that's based on considerations that involve both positional play and tactical play, if you have the combination of those two things, then you basically can outplay your opponent from any position, and that's the hope, or outplay a similarly rated opponent from any position. So I'm big in favor of that general style. But in terms of coming up with assessments for how you should play, there's a lot that goes into that. There's basically three main branches. The branches are open games, which are games which start with e4, e5, semi-open games, which start with e4 and then anything by black, and then there's closed games, which start with d4 and d5 by black. And basically, I think you would consider openings that don't start with e4 or d4 to fit into the closed section, but they're sort of positionally specific. In any case, you have to decide kind of whether d4 opening is better for you or an e4 opening is better for you, or a c4, which generally fits under the d4 category, is better for you. It's a tough question. It depends on whether you like positions in which there's a lot of tactical play or positions in which there's a lot of positional maneuvering. Positional maneuvering, the strengths go under D4. D4, hey, welcome, Julio. Thanks for joining the stream. But yeah, so basically assessing D4, D5, that's sort of that's a choice for... Yeah, that's great. So you are scheduled in. Good question, Julio. You are in for I don't know. To be honest, I think checking the Discord's probably the best idea. There's a schedule on the Discord that usually is the the best way to determine that. I don't see you for today, Julio, to be honest. I don't think you're in for this morning. Yeah, not in for this morning, Julio. But anyways, basically this E4 D versus D4 type strategy, making that choice between openings, that's really the biggest question. So yeah, that's my question, and I also wanted to kind of take a look at a single opening based on this idea. This is an open game. It's basically an idea that. Okay, yeah, no problem. So yeah, bishop c4, knight f6 is the two knights defense. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I guess my question is, we're just kind of coming up with ideas to, we're coming up with ideas to basically assess what, what opening design you're into. I wanted to preface the, basically the lesson that we're doing. But the idea, I guess, in terms of coming up with ideas for what to play, it's a determination of how open a, how open a position you want. And just so we know, the Berlin defense is bishop to b5, knight to f6. Hey, good morning, Ansh. Thanks for joining the stream. So yeah, so in this situation, you're basically looking at the Berlin defense. This is a, basically this is an open game, an example of an open game, and we'll get back to this later. I just wanted to start a bigger conversation about kind of what to do in open versus closed games. So I want to talk about the concepts behind open, closed, and yeah. So we're playing a Blitz tournament. Anyone here who's new, feel free. We have a chess.com club. I'll link it here. There's a club on chess.com that's doing a tournament after this. Aphelion was nice enough to set up a a tournament here. So if you're interested at all, feel free to join. This is a, basically this is a chess tournament that is held, I guess, I'm going to play in it. It starts at 10 a.m. Eastern time, roughly, a little after 10 a.m. Eastern time. Feel free to join, and I'll be playing in it. I'm also going to stream this tournament. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of streaming my chess play. Like, I'd rather keep it a lecture channel. But for this special event, I'm happy to do it. So we're gonna stream this starting at 10 a.m. Eastern in about 2 hours from now. But if anyone's not in the club, if anyone's not already signed up for this tournament, feel free to sign up. That's the chess.com club. If you're in the club, you can sign up for the tournament. So basically talking about suitable openings based on playing style. This is an open game. Open games involve having easy, basically open lines for attack for both sides. Both people are able to get their bishop out quickly. Both players are able to develop their knights to reasonable squares quickly. Moves like knight f3, d3, bishop g5, and black can do kind of the similar symmetrical thing on his side. So that's open. Semi-open is, is basically, Sicilian is an example. Modern's an example. I guess Alekhines would technically be an example. But they generally end up in situations where white has open lines and black has closed lines. These openings will generally be marked by kind of a developmental advantage by white, and then more kind of constricted closed lines on black side of the board. Things like knight d7, bishop to, this white squared bishop often has difficulty developing in these games. And basically, it's kind of an idea of what to do. What should black do here? So bishop to c4. Basically, these types of opening lines, involve very open play. And then closed games, d4, d5 type openings. These are marked generally by closed positional lines. Moves like c4 versus c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, and basically ideas where, so this, this is basically a theory slot related to open, semi-open, and closed games. I'm trying to go through the ideas of I'm basically trying to go through the ideas of what opening should people play to fit people's playing style. It's a theory slot based on the idea of, should you play an open game, a closed game, or a semi-closed game? As white, you don't really have the choice between an open game or a semi-closed, semi-open game. But this basically idea fits into large scale. Should you play e4, e5 open lines, or should you play d4, d5 closed lines? It's usually it depends. Depending on your tactical strength versus positional strength, you should move somewhere on the dial between open lines and closed lines. If white plays open lines, then basically you should be ready for a tactical game. So if you're a tactical player, you should probably lean towards e4, e5 being generally played. If you're interested in a positional game in which there's not much direct action, but both players are kind of pushing towards end goals of specific opening files, opening ranks, then d4, d5 is probably a better opening for you. Anyways, really interesting. I guess we could go through the most common for each. In open games, the choices are generally Italian game, which is marked by bishop to c4, Ruy Lopez, which is marked by bishop to b5, Scotch, which is d4. I guess I can draw them out here. So bishop to c4, bishop to c5, Scotch. There's Vienna games, knight to c3. There's King's Gambit is there. But it's really about stylistically coming up with what you're the most interested in. If you want to find a place where you can exploit your tactical strengths, open games are the way to play. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, AO. I appreciate it. But yeah, d4, d5, these are games that are going to be marked by generally like closed positions. So c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, bishop to f5, bishop to f4. These lines, this is a more open version of a closed game. But generally these are gonna involve is maneuvering behind an intact pawn structure. These are generally less likely to involve trades and less likely to involve trades on the e file. The open lines in the closed games tend to come on the c file, but even then they come with less frequency than potential open lines in the center in the open games. So it's really just about determining your specific positional strengths, your specific tactical strengths, and with kind of this general overview, I was thinking we could move into what I had slated in terms of an actual opening design here. The idea behind this lesson was basically to introduce a new opening: knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5, knight to f6. So this is the Berlin defense. This is an interesting opening. It was used in a Kramnik-Kasparov game that was, well documented and a famous one. But basically it was used kind of as a drawing tool by Black, aiming for equality as opposed to a victory as Black. There's a number of pretty important, concepts here. It plays off a little bit differently than a Ruy Lopez game, specifically that it has an earlier Panov-style, threat on e4. White has to decide whether to play, a move to defend e4, or whether he should just ignore threats on e4. Anyways, playing this move, White has a number of different options. Most common are castles, knight c3, d3. Of these three, they all kind of effectively defend this e4 pawn. Castling does this indirectly. Castling does this through e4 or castles, knight takes e4, rook e1, and then knight to d6. In this case, knight can take on d6. The knight can't take b5 because knight takes c6. So here, bishop e7 or knight takes e5 are the choices. Knight takes e5 has a better winning percentage for White. Bishop e7, and basically White will end up kind of with a he'll either have to decide to trade off his bishop for the knight on c6, or he'll aim for a displaced rook. So bishop f1 here, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. Now this rook is on e5 very early in the game. This can become a pretty solid attacking target. Ideas like castles could be pretty strong. Castles, d4, bishop f6. And basically here, My argument is that the rook's going to have to play back to rook e1 probably. Rook e1 is significantly better than rook to e2. But now there's a lot of open lines. White, I think, if you look at the eval in this case, the eval is probably going to be fairly favorable to white. But a lot of open lines, a lot of opportunity for both sides, and pressure, I think, on basically pressure on the e file by white, and pretty good center control by white, particularly because this knight is placed on d6. There's not really much opportunity for white to be challenged in the center. White's going to have a sustained advantage in the center. He can play moves like c4, knight c3. And overall, it's an interesting situation. We can take a look. There's definitely more stuff here. E4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6. And basically, white's going to have a solid position. White has a solid position. This is used as a drawing tool. It's not really much of an opportunity for black to win. That was the castles line, and that was a demonstration of how castles can be used to hold on to this e4, or at least make e4 an exchange as opposed to a loss. Then white plays a move like knight c3. This is another main line. 4 knights game here. That's basically the transposition of this Berlin defense into this 4 knights game. This is Berlin defense with d3. So of these 3 options, castles, knight c3, and d3, knight c3 is a transpositional tool into the 2 knights, 4 knights. But d3 is a continuation of the Berlin defense. With d3, bishop c5, c3, castles, white has a lot of different options here. Most are going to involve castling and just straightforwardly involving the development, involving an increase in development. If there's an increase in development here, there's not really much of an issue in terms of, in terms of black's play. Basically with this, with basically all the threats dealt with on the board, white can just sort of comfortably develop. Moves like bishop e3 are good. Moves like bishop to g5 are good. Knight to d2, rook e1. I mean, they all kind of make sense. They're all going to lead towards white having kind of a sustained, more solid development. And basically, I think, there's plenty of ideas. White's going to go for kind of standard Ruy Lopez or Italian game type threats. Basically this pin on g5 is going to face off towards this knight. And, there's basically a lot of different theory that can evolve from this. But it turns into a Ruy Lopez type game. Surprisingly, knight to f6 involves less of a chance of trade of bishop to c6. It's a less exchange friendly opening than bishop takes c6 is. Here, d3, bishop c5, c3, castles, bishop to g5, and basically, white's going to have Ruy Lopez type threats. There's no real reason for white to trade off for this knight on c6. At some point, you might have opportunities that are going to be related to bishop takes c6, knight takes e5. But overall, white's going to end up in a situation where, white's going to end up in a situation where he can kind of play comfortably. So yeah, h6, bishop h4, bishop e7, knight d2. This is an option in which black aims for the direct, the direct retreat of the bishop. But overall, we can continue to look at forks in this Berlin defense. But I think it might be more helpful to look at a fully played out instructional opening. Bishop to b5, knight f6, d3, bishop to c5, c3, castles, and basically this is a very standard and easily transposed into Berlin defense for white. Here, d6, bishop to g5, h6, bishop to h4. White's looking fine here. There's no real issues. Ideas like knight to d2 are good. G5, bishop to g3. And overall here, hey, welcome Electric Horse. Thanks very much for joining the stream. Hello. We were just doing an analysis of the Berlin defense. Yeah, there's ideas, knight h5, bishop to g4, bishop to b6. But overall here, I think white's looking fine. Ideas like h4 can be used to undermine the king side, and basically it just looks like a Ruy Lopez game at this point. This came out of this early knight f6, came out of early Berlin defense. H4, knight h2, knight d2, it's just good for white in general. So here you go. Queen f6, king h1, queen g6, bishop to c4, and overall, this opening I think just should favor white. These are better attacking chances. Yeah, Rui Lopez involves opening up the king side sometimes. Yeah, I agree with that. I think Rui Lopez as black involves some open lines. One of the things that you can do, Electric Horse, is you can delay castling in that case. You can wait until, basically you can wait until, black castles. Yeah, Petrov works. And with this castling here, hey, Sam Sejuani, welcome to the stream. But yeah, so all of this ends up being pretty good for white. Having an open king side to attack, having fixed targets of attack on the king side, that's all going to be helpful. Ideas like b4, a4, the queen side attacks, can generally be secondary. A lot of the ways that white can, open up attacks on the king side will involve basically, some double-edged aspect of it. Knight to g1, f3, knight to e2, all of that I think is an opportunity for white to continue to try to expand. But I think that white has to be both. White can be both optimistic in that he has ability to break open the king side, and I see bishop f1 more frequently. But in any case, there's a number of different options. Okay, so looking at the Rui Lopez that I play, just so we get into that, is I would say the Stafford is generally the Stafford is generally refuted. I would say I'm pretty down on the Stafford, to be honest. Good question. We can kind of look into that. So the Stafford with this early basically Petrov's. Knight takes e5, knight c6, knight takes c6, d takes c6. This is pretty refuted. If white's getting an advantage of 1.4 out of an opening, it's going to be difficult for black to basically catch up. 1.4, 1.7, these are big advantages for white. And if white's securing these advantages that are this large, 1.4, 1.7, that means in order for black to win, he's basically going to have to play a game that's 2.7 pawns as good as black, or basically that gets 2.7 pawns ahead. It's possible, but it's unlikely. I mean, if you're up by 1.7 pawns, that means that in order to win, so say in order to secure a winning position, which generally tends to be about 1 pawn advantage going into an endgame, this 1.7 is going to have to shift in a direction to -1 for black. That's going to be about 2.7 pawns difference, and it's going to be really difficult for black to secure that. Anyways, this situation. Sorry, I wanted to go back into the Berlin defense. Bishop b5, knight f6, d3. Basically, white's looking good here. This is a common response. This is one of the 3 responses. Again, just so we know, white needs to come up with a way of defending the e4 pawn. Defenses include castles, knight c3, and d3. Say d3 here. This is probably the most straightforward way to defend e4. D3 is good for a number of reasons. Basically with d3 having been played, you can play bishop g5, you can play knight c3, you can castle, but the issue is with d3 generally it has some aspects that will lead to this bishop becoming underdeveloped. If the bishop is already on b5, then d3 is d3 is very comfortable, and you can play bishop to g5 instead. So d3, bishop c5, c3 is an idea. White has to decide whether he wants to transpose this into a more more Italian game type style situation where he's playing c3 and d4, or whether he wants to start a Rui Lopez attack with a with a threat on the f6 knight. So bishop to g5 here is fine. No problems for white. I don't know. Knight c3 could also be used. But it's up to you. There's multiple different variations. This position should play out solidly for white. Let's take a look at the opening book. In the opening book, the three most common positions are c3, bishop takes c6, and castles. Let's take a look at the exchange line of the variation. So, can't you take on c6 and then win the e5 pawn? Yeah, potentially, but it's not the most common line. In this situation, knight takes e5 in, this opening leads to queen to d4. So bishop takes c6 is going to have to be delayed until after castling. Castling here, then that option. Castling, by the way, is the third most common option. Castling, and then say, for example, castling. Then yeah, you can definitely take. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6, and then knight takes e5 here is definitely an established line for white. This should be good, better. And if white castled instead of d3, would that be an option? Let's see. Assuming that knight takes e4 is considered to be the best option for white. So yeah, on castles, knight takes e4, rook e1. And this idea, this fully sacrifices the e4 pawn anyways, right? So if you castle, then knight takes e4, and then these pawns just trade. There's nothing particularly advantageous about taking the e5 pawn because black took the e4 pawn. Castles, knight takes e4, rook e1, knight d6, and white's looking good. Castles, knight takes e4, rook e1, knight d6. Yeah, but it's not even a gambit, right? I mean, I don't know if you would call it that. You could just play knight takes e5 here, and white is just, white's basically just trading, right? It's not really as if you win. So this situation, bishop to b5, knight f6, castles is just going to lead to an exchange. The dangerous situations where white can actually win e5 come after moves like knight to c3. With knight to c3, bishop to b4, I think this will still end up trading, but bishop takes c6, d takes c6, knight takes e5, bishop takes c3. It's just going to trade. I'm not sure if there's ever actually an opportunity for knight to take e5 here, but I think you need to be careful. If knight takes e5 is given as a potential opportunity, it can lead to a loss of material in some prepared trap lines. So you need to be careful with that. Knight f6, castles, knight takes e4, rook e1. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Stock. I appreciate it. So knight d6, you're basically trading off e4 and e5, alright? I think this is fine, right? Castles, d4, bishop f6. White's looking fine here. No real issues. Anyways, e4, e5. This is all, or e4, e5, bishop b5, knight f6. At the most basic level, this is the Berlin defense. Just so we know, this is what happens when black has the opportunity to respond to the Ruy Lopez. And, with this knight f6, ideas like castles are good, ideas like d3 are good, knight c3. The main lines here, knight c3, d3, castles. White's looking pretty solid. Say d3, bishop c5, c3, castles. Now white's looking fine. There's no real issues. It's basically a closed Ruy Lopez defense. White has to determine how this, how he best wants to play against this. But this shouldn't be a threat that White is particularly nervous about in the Ruy Lopez. It's not the best move. It's not the most popular move. In terms of assessing, the various popularity of this opening, knight f6 is second relative to a6, and a6 is played about 5 times more often. Other Ruy Lopez defenses, Steinitz, Fianchetto, Janish Gambit. Those are all fine. But knight f6 is not something that white should be particularly worried about if they're a Ruy Lopez player. It generally offers white a very slight advantage and drawish type positions. Knight takes e5 is never really completely available. It's rare that that would happen. We can look for it, but I don't think it's that much of a a common idea. In this Berlin, here's another variation. This one with bishop to c5. Here, ideas can include d3. A common thing in the Ruy Lopez is to get this threat on g5 and pin the knight on f6. Yeah, d6, knight to c3, castles, bishop to g5, and white's looking fine. This opening is a little better for black, but pretty equal. This should be fine for white. So, as a Ruy Lopez player, I don't think the Berlin defense is going to offer anything, particularly threatening. I think it's just going to lead to a relatively equal opening where you have, opportunities to win in a manner similar with the normal, with the normal Ruy Lopez opening. Threats like bishop to g5, common. Knight d5, c3, d4, everything that's available in a normal Ruy Lopez game should be available in the Berlin game. It's relatively quiet, nothing too frightening, and yeah, should end up with a win for white. Fishing pole can be dangerous in the Berlin. I don't know. The fishing pole is kind of a. I've seen the fishing pole opening. Basically with the fishing pole, like black is it's going for like an early an early attack. But again, like these types of openings, I'm just not a huge I'm just not a huge fan of. I think it's kind of a risky like way to play. I don't know. If you're careful and you don't unnecessarily take or play like knight d4, I think you should be okay. The fishing pole gets dangerous when players are unfamiliar with Philidor type traps. Philidor type traps, just so we know, are the ones where you can basically sacrifice the queen. These are given in like instruction in most kind of like low-level chess classes, but yeah, we can look at the Philidor traps: knight f3, d6, bishop to c4, say knight to f6. I don't know. I'm trying to just set one up, but the fishing pole attack, yeah, it's basically junk. It's the type of threat that you can get if you're at a relatively low level. It's a chess trap. Chess traps become less and less popular. At some point, you end up getting into a situation where you really need to play strong positional chess. I don't know. I guess I'm sort of in favor of playing these against really high-rated players. I think you might snag more than you would think. Yeah, fishing pole is an attack that involves an early bishop to g4 and big attacking chances for both sides. But yeah, Sam Sejuani, it's good to know these types of things. I mean, it's been many years since I've actually, heard, it's been many years since I've sort of remembered these types of traps, but fishing pole is a particular, it's basically a particular trap that involves an early bishop to g4, which both sides have a chance of misplaying. Anyways, back to Berlin. Bishop to b5, knight to f6. I don't know, up to you. Knight to c3, bishop to b4, castles. You're basically just in sort of a four knights game. Four knights, Ruy Lopez has a lot of similarities to most mainline Berlin defenses. They all sort of transpose in similar ways. So it's much more important to understand kind of how to play the Ruy Lopez. Things like just how to exert a solid threat on f6. It's going to be very valuable for white. And basically how to knight c3 is a transpositional tool. With castles, you're basically going into a more mainline Berlin defense. Castles and d3, mainline Berlin. Knight c3, and you're in the two knights. You can always look at these labels here. This is basically four knights game, a Spanish variation. And if you go with D3, I don't even know what that is, to be completely honest, Sam Sejuani. I can look it up, but my opening theory knowledge as an Italian player of the Rui Lopez is not fantastic. So I'm actually curious, since I don't know it. Let's look. Mortimer defense. Yeah, interesting. Yep, this is a new one to me. So yeah, let's play it out. I'm actually curious, Sam Sejuani. But yeah, these early attacks. There's so much here. This is such like rich theory. But yeah, feel free to ask any of this stuff. I'm just not going to pretend to know it. Yeah, if we go through this is the Mortimer trap, new one to me, but super happy to go through. Let's see. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. Sure, yeah, okay. Bishop to B5, knight F6, D3, knight E7. Interesting. I can't imagine that this is too common. But yeah, this is a new one to me, Sam Sejuani. So yeah, about these openings, I guess I would say the main thing about these opening theory is that it's, it's great knowledge to have, but it's way less practical in general than tactical play and positional play. I love this stream. I think it's awesome. I get to learn so much stuff. Like I had no idea that this kind of prepared trap existed. I didn't. So it's really cool for me to get to look through this stuff. I guess I would say if you know what the Mortimer trap is, but you're not 1600 or better, I think that there's some inefficiencies in the way that you're studying. Overall, these types of traps, these types of early, games basically are not super important to achieving a relatively high level of chess. Like, I don't know what this is. I mean, Sam Sejuani, I think it's fantastic that you know it. It's great. I don't know it, so I think that it's great that you do, and I think that it's basically, you're always going to have that knowledge, which is super helpful. But yeah. It's great that you know this, Sam Sejuani, but it sort of indicates to me that I think you may want to spend more time on tactical training and positional training. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think these types of traps might be, helpful, but in terms of achieving a higher level of chess play, it's way more important that you study tactics. If you study tactics and positional play and really get a good fundamental understanding of a position, that's really what chess is about at the end of the day. An opportunity to play this tactic might come up, or an opportunity to play this trap might come up. One out of every, say, 25 games that you play as black. But an opportunity to excel tactically comes up in every single game from both sides. So that's why I think that tactical training is such an important thing to do. In terms of just overall value, you can try a piecemeal approach to chess where like an enormous amount of opening theory, and this one gets played once every 25 times, this one gets played another once every 25 times, and you can gradually try to fill out your opening book so that you have good overall opening knowledge. But I don't think that it's super. I think that there are more important things at an amateur level. Arbitrarily learning opening theory is great, and it's great to have general knowledge. And a purist approach to chess is basically have all this opening theory and then go from there. But I think that in terms of practical skill, practical improvement, if you just study tactics, tactics come up in every single game. Once you exit this opening theory. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say opening by playing style, is an idea for this, for this opening, lesson. D4, E4, D4, E4, and how to play semi-open versus open games. That is the idea. But yeah, I guess I would say, it's mainly about strength of play. I think, it's one of these things. It sort of frustrates me a little bit about the learning versus. I mean, yeah, we can do it again, but yeah, I guess I would say the main distinction between what opening style people should play is opening. Open games e4, e5 will lead to threats like knight f3, bishop to c4, and open lines where you can get good tactical play going. D4 involves closed games where you can basically, this is going to involve maneuvering, strength of play. Is going to revolve around how well you can play quiet moves and try to execute a longer, an attack that's prepared longer for, better, basically. Like in a closed game, you're running d4, d5, and basically you're trying to get, small maneuvering plays that will transpose into a, d4, d5, and small maneuvering plays that will lead to a longer sustained attack. Usually there's only one or two main breaks in a d4 game. There's not kind of this continuous 2 or 3 move tactical play that's so common for, for open games. And that's really up to you. I mean, if you're into positional maneuvering, D4 games, closed games are better for you. If you're into, 2 and 3 move tactics, if that's where you're really strong tactical play, then, open games are the ones for you. And overall, I think it's basically just a situation where, you're assessing your own playing style subjectively. And trying to come up with the opening play that is that you're the most comfortable with. So, anyways, my main thoughts on that topic, if you have a way, basically a metric by which you determine what you're strong at, by all means, play what you're strong at. One of the interesting things about chess is how do you assess whether people are good, positionally or tactically? I guess you compare their positional skills to their tactics rating to their to their overall rating, but that's a very incomplete way to calculate this. At the end of the day, it depends on what you like the most, I think. All these top line openings, both open and closed, are playable at the highest levels. So yeah, I guess I would say, do what is the most fun for you, whatever gives you the most fun games to play, and then use that to steer kind of the openings that you're interested in. If you're interested in tactical play, e4. If you're interested in positional play, d4. That's the highest level line on this, and I think that should be helpful in kind of assessing what you're doing. Anyways, I think this, basically with this type of game, I don't know these traps. This Mortimer trap is completely new to me. I don't know how valuable this type of stuff is to learn, to be completely honest. I think you can find many relatively low-rated players that play these types of games. And I don't know. In my mind, improvement is mostly about beating stronger and stronger players, right? But if you're playing trap openings that only come up once out of every 25 times, you sort of have to make a concentrated decision about whether that's something that's going to be very useful for you. I've never seen that before either. But yeah, I think that with knight to e7, you're pretty much, there's, I know that there's traps here, but castles, c6, I don't know, bishop to c4, knight g6. In this situation, it looks like black's going to get excellent control of d5. I'm surprised that d5 isn't the play here. But yeah, now it sort of looks like, if we take it from black's perspective, it has some characteristics that remind me of the Van Geet opening that we were looking at, knight c3. But overall, this type of knight structure, this is going to end up being this is going to be useful to attack white on the king side. Anyways, there may be more prepared traps there, I don't know. But, the thing about it is the number of games that you're playing out of a specific trap is just relatively low. So if you have a specific trap in mind, you need to learn all the other corresponding things that can happen around that prepared theory. Interesting. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing it, Sam Sejwani. Let's take a look. I'm curious.
In today's chess,
Cool. Yeah, I like it a lot. Um, any free content, honestly, I'm super in favor of. But yeah, win fast. Win fast is not really the goal in chess, right? I mean, that's the only thing that I would say about this. This is very interesting, though. If you have any other interesting stuff like this, Sam Sejwani, always feel free to bring it up. But yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Sam Sejwani. Appreciate it. But yeah, these types of trap openings, they're fun, but in terms of practically improving your play, it's just really about tactics. It's good to know these. It's good to have them like as secret weapons or whatever. And if you ever get the opportunity to play them, then sure. But just in terms of overall tactical strength, that's where I would, that's what I would do. Anyways, very interesting. Thanks very much for the ideas on what to play. And yeah, I think we can go on to the game analysis section of this lesson. Overall, really interesting. Really appreciate it. And yeah, let's take a look at the games. All right, here's a game from Aphelion. We can take a look at the Aphelion variation. I'm kind of curious about this. We always, basically, the Aphelion variation is a specific line in it's basically a specific line in the Traxler opening. Traxler opening is another quick win for white, but the Aphelion variation is every time Aphelion plays a game, we're gonna play out the Aphelion variation. The Aphelion variation of the Traxler is e4, e5. Sorry, I'll get a new analysis board up. Aphelion variation, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6, and then what makes it the Traxler is knight g4, b5, bishop to c5 here, and basically this is the Traxler. Interesting. I mean, you can always sidestep those, right? Like Electric Horse, the Traxler is always something that one can sidestep if you're interested. So the Aphelion variation, bishop to c5, knight takes f7. So bishop to c5 is what makes it the Traxler. Knight takes f7, bishop takes f2, king f1. Queen e7, knight takes h8, d5, e takes d5, knight d4, d6, queen takes d6, c3. And basically here, white is, this is the Traxler game, and this is what well, yeah, I mean, but all the openings are a lot to remember. All the individual, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to even, what percentage of the games are you getting the Traxler? Is my question. But yeah, knight takes f2, bishop takes, king f1, queen e7, knight takes h8, pawn takes, knight to d4, d6. And then what makes it the Aphelion line, knight to c3. So c3 here. Yeah, so anyways, this is the Aphelion line. Just so we know, e4, e5, knight f3, bishop c4, and then knight takes f7, bishop takes, king f1, queen e7, knight takes h8, d5, pawn takes, knight to d4, d6, and then c3. In terms of eval, this position leads to a win for white. This is white up by about 2.2 pawns. Much better situation for white, and better here. Anyways, interesting situation, and that is the Aphelion opening. Just so we know. Cool. On to the next one. This is All right, so this is Aphelions' most recent game. Let's take a look. And basically, Aphelion is playing as black here. So he's facing off against the bishop's opening. He responds with knight to f6. Knight to f6 is fine, most common. Knight to f3, knight to c6, and then basically knight to g5. So here I'm sure that this turns into a Traxler game as well. Why would it not? Let's look. Knight takes f7, bishop takes, king f1. We've determined that king f1 is the correct response to this opening. Queen e7, knight takes a8, d5, and basically here, this is a very aggressive game. Pawn takes d5, knight to d4, c3, bishop to g4, and black plays queen to a4 here. So, white plays this early. I guess, I don't know. I'm sort of like, I don't know. All these opening missteps in the Traxler, I'm always just like, I don't know. I mean, your knowledge in the Traxler ideally would be really complete if you're playing it. But c3 is a big error. Bishop to g4, queen a4, knight to d7, and basically white's looking awful here. This ends up in a situation where black starts an attack early and checkmates. Nice. Okay, cool. Good win, Aphelion. Very interesting. So this demonstrates why, again, you have kind of only moves type situation for white here. So basically here, white needs to play c3 or d6. This one, I guess, does this one fool the engine? This one tricks the engine, which is kind of interesting. Interesting. Yeah. I always think these are interesting just for the sake of tricking the engine. But yeah, d6 is the move. D6 over c3. C3 leads to this issue. Bishop to g4. Interesting. Yeah, so tricking the engine's always fun. NM is NM is getting a rating. NM varies by country. NM is 2200 in the United States. If you get your rating to 2200, you get an NM title. GM, IM, FM, those are all FIDE titles, and they're given by FIDE. FM is 2300 FIDE. IM is, I think, 2400 or 2450 maybe, and 3 tournament performances, and GM is 2500 and 3 tournament performances. But yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is the knight g5 in the Italian. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the lowest threshold. It varies from country to country, though. Well, yeah, but that's a different conversation. Anyways, this, or how about Arena CM? How about Arena CM? I think that's the easiest title to get. ACM is the easiest title in my mind. Arena? Oh, the Arena titles. Yeah, that's fun. That's a discussion that's fun. Yeah. So basically about 5 to 10 years ago, FIDE started its own web platform. It was called Arena Chess, I think. But yeah, those are titles. Oh, you should get one, Aphelion. You should get an Arena title for yourself. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about let's talk a little bit about this. The Arena titles are a new titling system from FIDE. So if you're interested in getting a title from FIDE, I think the Arena titles might be the best choice for you. So I would encourage anyone on this stream. Actually, let's really get into this. I like this one a lot. So FIDE about 5 to 10 years ago started an online titling system. So the arena chess titles. Let's look it up. But yeah, if you guys are interested in some awesome titles, there's a lot that are open to you guys, and everybody. So let's talk about this. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, D Cravid. Appreciate it. But yeah, they're pretty rare, so maybe they're particularly obscure and hard to get. No, we can't get an arena title by winning today's arena, but I would strongly recommend that you guys get this. Arena Grandmaster is if you get a performance rating of over 2,000 in the arena thing. Arena CM. So there you go. All right, this has to be the easiest title to get from FIDE. Arena Candidate Master is achieved by a series of 150 bullet games, 100 blitz games, or 50 rapid games with a performance rating of over 1,100. I don't think so, but you should ask them. So yeah, so if you guys are interested in getting some FIDE titles, this is a great option for you. These arena titles, so I knew I could add some value to this. But yeah, if you guys are interested in getting titles, definitely go for this option. Yeah, no, super strong, super in favor of you guys going for this. I think everyone on my stream should have a title, to be honest. So what you do is you go to you go to FIDE's server. Yeah, no, totally. I think Sam Sejuani, this has your name written all over it, man. These are all no, I think these are great. It's an online title. It's an arena title. And if you guys are interested in becoming titled players by the world governing body of chess, this is probably the easiest way that you can do it. So Arena Candidate Master, if you get a performance rating of over 1,100, you can take a look at this and get yourself a FIDE rating. You can officially put it next to your title on your on your chess, all of your chess related information, and yeah. If you'd like to get ACM, this is a 150 bullet games, 100 blitz games, or 50 rapid games. So yeah, this exists. And if you would like to become a titled FIDE rated player with a title, you can sign up for this and get that rating. I know, no, I like it a lot. I think that's a great idea. FIDE is the international body of chess. It's led by a it's based in Russia, and that is a thing that you can do. Get a FIDE rated title, and yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free. Could be some interesting stuff, and yeah, go get yourself an ACM title. I would encourage anybody on my stream. If anybody gets an ACM title from FIDE, please post it on the stream, and I will give you a big congratulations for it. So I strongly recommend getting one of these. Why not? It will definitely increase your marketing ability. You'll probably be able to sell your chess lessons in the United States for a lot of money, or historically you would have been. And I don't think it costs very much. I think it costs about $30-40 if I remember correctly. So really good question. But yeah, I think it costs about $40. I'm not sure which denomination it's under, but yeah, if you're interested in getting a FIDE title for yourself, you have to meet the requirements, which in this case is 150 bullet games, 100 blitz games, or 50 rapid games with a performance rating of over 1,100, and you too can become a titled player. So yeah, so if you guys are interested in becoming titled chess players, I would encourage everyone who wants to pursue this route. I don't have one myself. Maybe I should go get an AGM. Yeah. I mean, but to be fair, it's only $40. But yeah, it is. It's $40. If it was larger, if it was a larger amount, I'd have more reservations. But it's only $40, so feel free. No, the title I don't think costs money, but I think membership to the arena does. The thing about membership to the arena is you get 1 year of play on their arena, and but yeah, you can get your own titles, guys. Tell everyone you know that if you want a FIDE title, you can get one. Yeah, that's the route by which you can become a title player the most easily. I strongly think Aphelion should become a title player. I strongly think that everyone here should become a title player. It's well within reach, and yeah. Well, don't spend $40. I mean, this channel is for free. My goal here is completely free chess lessons, but I am happy to add value where I can. So yeah, if anyone's interested in learning how to become a FIDE rated title player, everyone who is capable of meeting these requirements and capable of spending $40 can do this. So yeah, FIDE arena titles. I'm gonna keep this on the board. Hopefully, it becomes the thumbnail for this stream. And if anyone's interested in getting a FIDE title, one can do it using this method. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know, tell all the chess community. Get yourself a FIDE title. I don't have one, but if you'd like one, you can get one. Anyways, this is the arena title. It requires about a $40 membership to Arena Chess. But a FIDE title, if you'd like, I think is something that you can easily get if you meet the requirements. Anyways, that's interesting. An interesting thing that's happening there, and this is the Traxler. Aphelion's playing the Traxler here. Knight takes f7, bishop takes c5, king to f1, and black's looking pretty solid. Knight c3, early c3. Yeah, totally. No, I'm glad to add some value, Sam Sejwani. I sort of forget which of the tricks of the trade I know. Sometimes I forget that I know them, but that's definitely one of them. If anyone's interested in getting a FIDE title, you can get one there. Yeah, strongly recommend FIDE arena titles. That's something that exists. It's funny, you just sort of forget these things, like, so yeah, no, I think everyone on the stream should get a FIDE title, because I think that it might be something that you can do. So yeah, no, I'm super in favor of that. And just so you all know, that is a thing that exists. But I forget. I just forget the things that I know about chess sometimes. Cool. So anyways, Aphelion gets this overwhelming win out of the Traxler system. White plays this early c3, which breaks the engine. That's always good. Very interesting. And bishop to g4, cool. And now black should be in pretty good shape here. Really wild. The engine can't keep up with the calculating here. That's what's particularly cool about this situation. Yeah, the eval's all messed up on this. This is actually really funny. Oh, cool. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to register for that tournament. That looks awesome. I'm excited about it. I will sign up for that now. Yeah, so if anyone's interested, I'm going to post the link for the tournament here. Aphelion was nice enough to set this up. So yeah, that's the one. If anyone wants to sign up, I'm gonna take a short break after this stream, and then I'll live stream the tournament too. But yeah. Cool. Aphelion shows some more theory here. He does not play the Aphelion variation, which we showed at the beginning of the stream. White does not play the correct moves to allow it. Just so we know, Aphelion variation is basically this C3 move on move 10 as opposed to move 9. But yeah, another good win, another theory, and yeah, good stuff. Cool. Yeah, thanks all for sending. But that tournament's open. It's available, so feel free to play. I really like the idea Felion had of starting a tournament, and maybe we should do that as like a regular thing. Like we could do that as a weekly thing, and you could be the TD of Felion if you're interested. I like that a lot. Cool idea. Yeah. But on to the next one. Cool. So here's a game between Vlad and JSJCUEIE. We can take it. Yeah, I think it's great. I would do it. Interesting. Well, Aphelion's in charge of that, so... but anyways, I think it's a really cool idea. I appreciate it. If anyone has any ideas for the stream, if anyone has any ideas for things to do, like, I'm super happy to do them. So... Okay, so this is a Queen's Pawn opening. An early bishop to g4 here. What makes it the Zuckertort variation is basically, this early knight to f3. I don't know about that electric horse. I'm actually nervous. It's kind of scary for me because I hope I could, I hope I have a chance, but we'll see. I hope I'm, Okay, bishop to b4, bishop to d2, c5, pawn takes, bishop takes, and overall here, I think this situation tends to be good for white. White's development is way ahead of black's here, so white should be ahead. Let's go back and see kind of where the change in eval happened. Knight c3, bishop b4, bishop d2. c5 I think is an error, but yeah. So c5 basically, c5 is an idea. It's kind of interesting because, c5 has the advantage of giving the c6 opening to the knight. But c5 causes this problem. Basically after c5, a3 can be played, and then the bishop is forced back to a5, pawn takes, and then knight to c6 or whatever, doesn't really win for white. So knight to c6 here, bishop to c7, and it's up to black to kind of how to capitalize on this. So with c5, white can play a3, and bishop take to a5 leads to a better advantage for white. So pawn takes c5, and basically white is better here. So c5 allows that tactical response by black. An alternative here is bishop takes c3, in which case bishop takes c3 and probably, I don't know, c4 looks appealing. I don't know, maybe. But white's going to have a pretty solid advantage in any case. d4, black is now winning. And white wins. So let's play this front to back. E6, sure. This looks pretty solid for black. Knight to c3, bishop to b4, bishop to d2. c5 is an error. Let's talk a little bit about why c5 is an error. The main reason is tactical, but you can basically fix this. You can play a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and then c4. And this, this doesn't lead to a material loss, but it leads to an overextension. And you've traded off your good bishop as black. So regardless, whether or not white wins the c4 pawn tactically, it's still bad for black and good for white. White doesn't need to convert materially for this to happen. Pawn takes, and yeah, white is fine. So c5 is the first move for improvement for black. D4 is an error. Basically, with D4, there's a lot of tactical opportunities that come up for white. Starting with knight takes e4. If white just straightforwardly plays knight takes e4 here, black's response, d takes e3, bishop takes e3, should be winning for white. So here, bishop takes e3, and then knight d6 is extremely dangerous, king f8, f takes, f6, I guess. But white's in great shape. I mean, this is basically going to break open the white king side. So overall, very dangerous stuff. Yeah, let's take a look at the e6, e5, and e5, e4 pawn pushes. Yeah, I think this is a good plan for black. The first error. So let's slow down on that, Sam Serjwani, because I think you're raising a really good point, really good thing. But yeah, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and basically with e6, e5 here, black is making a play to solidify the center. I like this. Yeah, I like this general idea too. In this situation, it's not clear what black's best plan should be. This bishop feels dislocated on f3, so I think there's some appeal to pushing on the king side here, but e5 to e4 I think is a better play. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think you're looking at that in exactly the correct way, Sam Serjwani. I think e5, or e6, e5 is good, and I think e5, e4 is good too. This makes a lot of sense. Once it's like this, I feel like white is somewhat committed to playing e4. I'm also a little bit curious about d4, but I think that this this messes up white's bishop diagonal worse. So I think that e5, e4 is probably the best play for black. Queen a5, queen b6, cool. With e3, I think maybe f5 is better. But the real tactical error, so basically in terms of things that black did correctly and incorrectly in this game, this all makes sense. You're getting your bishops developed. Maybe it's an early, development of your bishops relative to your knights, but okay, sure, whatever. c5 is not the correct play. a3 wins tactically. White misses that, and then the game turns into this. Black's strategy is to advance in the center. That makes sense. And basically black is fine. This is not much better for white. Better options here for black than queen a5. The issue with queen a5 is that it allows b4 immediately. This is, I don't know, I guess, all right, the immediate playing of b4 doesn't work because the pin's on the a file. But yeah, e3 I guess is a better play for white. Bishop d2 setting up b4 is also a good idea. Bishop to d2 prompts queen b6 because otherwise b4 becomes a playable option. But queen a5 is just kind of not a very effective move. It doesn't help at all is the main problem. B4 is a B4 bishop takes B4. Is good for black, but there's nothing particularly prompting about queen to A5. White can just comfortably develop the bishop to D2, and queen A5 is kind of useless. Anyways, D4 is an error. This causes major problems for the E4 pawn, so that's not a good tactical play. And then here we're in a tactical zone. Rook to E1 does not make much sense here. This knight is hanging to this bishop. So rook to E1, bishop takes C3, queen takes C3, and now black's just better. And then white trades his rook off trades the rook for the queen unnecessarily. Much better was queen to C5, and everything is fine for black. So overall, this came into a crazy tactical situation. I wouldn't sweat it. C5 was misplaced. D4. But a number of basically tactical errors in the late game. C5 is also basically a tactical issue. The only real positional play that happened in this game, to be honest, is this E6 to E5 and E5 to E4 pawn push. I think this was good. I think this was a good good positional plan for black to capture the center. But yeah, overall, I think this was not particularly basically this was not a particularly soundly played game. In terms of accuracy, these accuracy scores are accurate. 60 and 56. It really just came down to major tactical play, major tactical oversights, and I'd recommend a lot of tactical study for both sides. Black can consider whether he wants to make more of knight. So black sent this game. And I want to make sure, that I kind of address things to look at in this game. I would consider as black here, developing your knights over your bishops. This one makes sense. Developing your light-scored bishop makes sense in these queen pawn openings because you end up with these blocked-in structures. But yeah, C5 is not that. C5 is a tactical error, so the tactical play really starts here. So I would say, consider whether you want to play moves like knight to F6 in this opening. Bishop to G4 makes sense, but adding on bishop to B4 here, I don't think really adds that much. I think knight F6 over a bishop to B4 is better for fundamental reasons. C5 is an issue. C5 creates problems for black. This was pawn takes C5 was not the correct tactical play, and then I think that E5 E4 made sense for black from a positional perspective. But anyways, I guess my main point for this is really study your tactics. There were multiple times, here for example, queen takes rook just doesn't make a lot of sense. You may lose a piece here, but losing a queen for a rook is just not correct. So yeah. I don't know. Tactical study, I guess, is the main thing, but also spend some time thinking about the relative values of, bishop versus knight development in the opening, and then potential tactics that can occur. Yeah, D4 was a big error, but that's a tactical question. Over pushed with D4. Focus more on development of knights versus bishops, and I think that'll take you in the correct direction. Okay, cool. Thanks very much for sending that game. Yeah, I think basically tactical focus is the best idea for you. Let's see. Just switching over to this. Hey, thanks very much for the follow, Zebzim. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, this is a TKBT SXU's game. All right, so let's take this from Black's position. All right, so it's an early center counter center game. Um, Black's basically transposing it into the Scotch. White transfers it into the Scotch. This is now the Scotch Gambit. Knight f6. This is questionable. Knight f6 leads to some issues with knight to g5, I think. If we're looking at this game, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's fine. It leads to this one. Cool. So yeah, so in looking at this game, it's an Italian game. There were some fried liver, basically fried liver, knight f7 type threats. Yeah, this is the advanced variation. Here, d5. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Mr. Pink. I appreciate it. D5 here, bishop b5, knight e4. And in this situation, this is pretty well-established opening theory. I'm curious to see the eval on it. I'm sure it's a little bit better for white, but it's pretty close to equality. This is a common Scotch line. White has the choice between taking on d4 or playing bishop to c5. So bishop to d7, bishop takes c6, bishop takes, and black's looking fine. After white plays e5, does queen e7 work? Yes. Queen e7 is playable here. Castles, and then, knight to g4 is an idea. But this ends up with dislocated pieces. So the answer is yes, it's playable, but it's not particularly good. It will effectively provide defense, but it'll still end up in dislocating this knight, and eventually probably losing back the e4 pawn. So d5 is more immediately challenging. So really good question, Sam Sirjwani. That's an important part of this opening. In this opening, if queen e7 is played, white just castles, and you can't take or retake this. Basically rook e1 becomes a really solid threat, and the knight's going to have to move. Probably to g8. On either g8 or g4, there's pressure on this d4 pawn. So queen e7 is better than d5 is better than queen e7 because it launches this quick attack and doesn't gambit the pawn, or it basically doesn't exchange the pawn back too early. Bishop to b5, knight e4, knight takes d4 is the main line here. So this is a big deviation from the main line. Basically white plays a 2% move. If we look at this, this shifts the game much more in black's favor. The advantage here is knight takes d5. This is the best play for white in this situation. Castles, and black gets to maintain his knight on d4 for a bit longer. He gets to play bishop to g4. Basically, this really weakens the threats on d4. Knight takes d3, and basically black is black is better. There's going to be healthy development on bishop to c5, and generally black's going to be controlling the center here. So in this game, I think we should learn this line. Basically this is the center game. It transposes into the Scotch game, which the center game frequently does. And then with knight f6, which is the main line here. By the way, I play bishop to c5 here. Bishop to c5 serves me pretty well in the Scotch game. Haxo gambit, cool. In this gambit, white generally plays c3, black plays queen to f6, e5 is playable. It's a pretty interesting gambit, actually. But knight to f6 is the main line, with knight f6, e5, d5. This is pretty much this is pretty much grounds for memorization. It's sort of just the correct thing to play here. So just so we know it, the Scotch game, d5, and then e5 and then d5 here. Bishop plays to b4, knight to e4, castles, bishop to d7, bishop takes, and then basically black's looking fine. No issues. E6, castles, pawn takes, rook takes, and now black's way up. The main shift happened here after this knight move. This leads to a tactical victory for black. This f7 pawn is really, really weak. So here, knight takes f2. Knight takes c5, sure, but knight takes queen. So this just leads to too much pressure on f2. Pawn takes f3. Pawn takes f3 is basically an error, right? Or pawn takes f2 is basically an error because the pressure on the f2 pawn is going to become too much. D5 had what was the best option to recapture? Good question. Good question. So this opening line. Main line here is definitely not e takes d6. So really good question. Really good question again, Sam Sejwani. I appreciate you asking all these. So yeah, I think this one is kind of one where you have to lean towards intuition. The main problem with e takes d6 is that it's going to open a defensive line on this pawn. I have to think that it's queen takes d6 here. It's like, why would it be anything else? Bishop takes d6, I guess. You then have a discovery. So if knight takes, actually, good question. I don't know the answer to that one either, but the answer is actually bishop takes d6. Because basically you have indirect defense on this d5 pawn. That said, this is a main line. E5 in the knight f6 and then e5 in the Scotch game. So this d5 is the main line, and then the main line is not pawn takes d6. It's bishop to b5. So I actually didn't know the correct response on e takes d6, but just so we know, it's actually bishop takes and queen d6 both provide a solid advantage for black here. But bishop takes d6 is actually a little bit stronger, and it's stronger for the reason that if there's an exchange on d5, your bishop to b4 provides a discovered check and indirect defense on d4. So anyways, very interesting situation. Bishop to d4 or bishop to b4 is the best. Knight takes and then bishop to b4. You're fine. So yeah. Anyways. D5 and knight to d4. D5, bishop b4 is the main line. Knight to d4, and castles is not the main line here. The main line here is knight takes d4. This puts a lot of pressure on c6. We can just play out the main line for a little bit further. This is these are pretty well established main lines here. You can go through this video and memorize it if you'd like, but you're playing into games with hundreds of years of theory. Scotch game has been popular for a long time, so this ends up playing into a situation where you can really put together some good potentially. But the issue with that is that it doesn't provide defense. You're raising a good point too, Sam Sejwani, is you are getting some compensation for this. You are getting some compensation on e takes d6, c takes d6, but it doesn't defend the e pawn. With bishop takes d6 or queen takes d6, you can actually maintain defense on this d4 pawn and not lose it. So that's really the change. Yeah. So I would say the other two are better. There are reasons why pawn takes d6 provides some compensation to black, but the pawn takes doesn't provide the defense on d4 that bishop takes or queen takes do. So overall, interesting situation, and yeah, thanks very much for the question. But I think bishop. I mean, I didn't get it right on the first guess either. I thought queen takes d6 was better, but then I realized that bishop to d6 still provides the queen's defense on that pawn. And then here, basically, black gets a huge tactical edge and wins. So overall, interesting situation, interesting Scotch gambit. transposes, a bunch of different transpositions here. Yeah, I think the main instructive part of this game is not to worry too much about what actually happened in the game, but let's just learn the Scotch Gambit. Knight f6, d5, and pressure's being placed on this bishop on b4 on c4. If the pawn trades e takes f6, d takes c4, this provides a great situation for black. Black's up almost 3 pawns here. Just overall, solid game for black. This is a very memorization heavy line. There's basically, in this line with knight takes d4, we're still in a situation in which there's about 1,600 games left. Bishop d7, bishop takes, castles, and then bishop to c5. This is very well established theory. I'd encourage anyone to take a look at it. But in terms of the game, white played an early deviation, castles, which is slightly worse. Overall here, the game turns into a tactical situation. Threats get overwhelming on f2. Pawn takes f2. Pawn takes f7. I think is generally a mistake for black here. Opening up all these lines on the f2 square, that's just questionable. But the knight e3, which adds even another piece directly attacking on this square, really causes problems for white. The improvement here was bishop to e3. Overall, in terms of changes for black in this game, I don't know. I think black played it correctly. But black basically played a main line, okay, and then white misplayed. So this is a situation in which black's opening preparation basically won him this game. I think that's generally pretty unusual up until a pretty high level, but these guys are experts, masters, or whatever, so it makes sense. And yeah, I don't think there's much to improve from black's perspective in this game. I mean, there might be some slight inefficiencies, but if we look at the game report, I mean, I'm guessing all of these come from, like, later stuff. Yeah, exactly. So actually, again, this is a great summary by chess.com. This is a close game that was lost by a mistake. I think that's absolutely right. Both players played in mainline theory until white made an error, and then black won based on that error. It's pretty uncommon. It's very uncommon at club level, but that's how high level games are determined frequently. So overall, very interesting situation. Very good demonstration of Scotch theory, and just so we all know, kind of the basic basic mainline Scotch. And by the way, this started as center game transposed into Scotch. It's knight f6, e5, d5, bishop b5, knight to e4. That's the mainline Scotch. Probably helpful to know at some level. And yeah, thank you very much for setting the game, TKBT. I don't think there's much to add. You played mainline, so perfectly well-established theory. Your opponent messed up mainline, and you capitalized on their error. So good job capitalizing on the tactical error by white, and pretty straightforward, intuitive game. Thanks very much, everyone, for sending your games. I'm going to post this link to this tournament once more that Aphelion has set up. I think that's great. Really nice of Aphelion to set it up. And yeah, if anyone's interested in playing in this chess tournament, feel free. You do have to be a member of the club, but yeah, feel free. This starts in about half an hour. I'm going to be playing and streaming it myself. And yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Thank you very much for setting it up, Aphelion. I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back. I will be back in about half an hour with a new stream. Thanks a lot, Aphelion. I really appreciate you setting up that tournament. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks everyone for sending games in. And yeah, we're trying out a new thing. I'm excited to try out a new format, and we will stream a tournament starting in about half an hour. Thanks all for being here. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you later. Thanks, guys. Bye.